From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in and making Washington Watch part of your day. Coming up on this Wednesday edition, the war in Israel entered day 5, and more reports have emerged of the horrific acts of brutality perpetrated by Hamas on Israeli civilians. Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, will join us from Israel a little later. And the House of Representatives is inching closer toward the selection of a speaker.
We have a lot of work to do, not just in the House for the people of this country, but we see how dangerous of a world it is and how things can change so quickly. We need to make sure we're sending a message to people all throughout the world that the House is open and doing the people's business.
That was Majority Leader Steve Scalise this morning before a majority of the Republican caucus voted to make him the House Speaker. However, it's not over. He has to get the support of at least 217 on the House floor. Now, with the reality of global instability resting heavily on House Republicans, will they unite? And if so, when? Oklahoma Congressman Kevin Hern, chairman of the House Republican Study Committee, joins us a little bit later for that conversation. And there's been a lot of focus on Iran's involvement in Israel.
Iran is behind this. And I know the administration is loath to peg Iran as responsible, but I think all roads lead to Iran. We certainly don't want to see this escalate, but Iran's already in this. And to say somehow that Iran's not, I think is just a lack of common sense.
That was Congressman Michael McCall, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That came following a classified briefing on the war in Israel earlier today. We're going to talk with New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith, also a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, in just a moment. And while there's been a lot of attention on the $6 billion released to Iran by the Biden administration, and rightfully so, not much has been said about the millions of U.S. dollars that have been given to the Palestinian Authority, much of that going into Gaza. We're going to talk about that as well. You know, my father used to tell me to learn from the mistakes of others, and quite frankly, that was good advice. Here's a question: will we learn from what Israel is experiencing? First, division is a distraction, and we can't allow internal division to distract us from external threats. And secondly, these distractions are deadly. We have to secure our southern border, which is something Tennessee Congressman David Kustoff said today following that same classified briefing on Israel.
If the intelligence failed in Israel, our intelligence, where we didn't pick up on this, I've got concerns about our own homeland. So from a long-term perspective, we need to make sure that we get our own house in order to make sure that we don't suffer an attack on our homeland like Israel did over the past several days.
We're going to talk with Georgia Congressman Rich McCormick about the urgency to secure the southern border. Our word for today comes from Acts chapter 23. Now, when there arose a great dissension, the commander, fearing lest Paul might be pulled to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him by force from among them and bring him into the barracks. But the following night the Lord stood by him and said, "Paul, be of good cheer. For as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome." Now, this was a message of encouragement and preparation for Paul, as he would encounter much over the next few years on his journey to Rome. Paul had stated back in Acts chapter 19 that he wanted to go to Rome, and he was going, just not in the way he had planned. But now he knew without a doubt the Lord was in it. So from this point forward, we see Paul acting on this word, not resting on it, because faith drives action. To find out more about our journey through the Bible, go to frc.org/Bible. So as reports of the atrocities committed by Hamas terrorists on Israeli civilians continue to emerge, the Biden administration has drawn criticism for funneling cash to organizations in the Gaza Strip that partner with known terrorist groups. The United States sent $730 million to United Nations Palestinian Refugee Assistance Group that Republicans in Congress say lacks guardrails to prevent it from benefiting Hamas. Now, the question is, what will the State Department do? What will it take for them to reevaluate foreign aid that does not benefit U.S. national interest. Joining me now for a conversation on this and more, Congressman Chris Smith. He is the senior member on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. He is also the co-chair of the Israel Allies Caucus and the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus. He represents the 4th Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman Smith, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Tony, thank you for having me on, particularly during these very dark times.
Now, even before this weekend, because you and I have been talking about this, you've been sounding the alarm to the Biden administration about this money going to the Palestinian Authority and how this is benefiting terrorists.
No doubt. There's a group called UNRWA, the UN Works Relief Agency. We give them, as you pointed out correctly, well over $700 million. Their textbooks are rife with anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism. I've had hearings on it. I've had people read at my hearings what they actually say, show the drawings, the militarization of children. They've had pep rallies like we do for a football game or a basketball game to honor and to fet suicide bombers. It is absolutely outrageous. UNRWA and, of course, Hamas are just so committed to slaughter, to genocide. They're just like the Nazis. They believe in a final solution by just eliminating, eviscerating the Jewish people. And they teach it from the very, very earliest days in a child's life. And UNRWA is a part of it. And I have raised concerns with that for decades. Like I said, even holding hearings on it and they tell us they're cleaning up the textbooks. They're not. There are teachers deployed there that just teach terrorism to these little kids.
Right. I've seen it myself. I've gone to Israel with members of Congress and been briefed by a number of groups on the ground. I've seen the same material you're making reference to. And just to make very clear that this is not political, just yesterday, a federal judge in Texas allowed discovery to take place in a lawsuit against the Biden administration for funding the Palestinian Authority with money that goes to Hamas. And one of the other programs they have is what's called the pay to slay, where actually they are giving money to individuals who commit acts of terrorism, in some cases paying them for life.
Yes. Tony, I had my 15th congressional hearing in June on anti-Semitism, and the big focus was on what is happening in the Middle East. And we heard from a number of witnesses. Nashon Sharansky, the great human rights activist from Israel, was our lead witness, but we heard from Palestinian Media Watch, and they reminded us that 100% of all of the terrorists who are apprehended by Israel and sent to prison, they get a salary from the PLA. Their families are taken care of. And when they are finally, if they serve their jail sentence, they have a job waiting for them with the PLA. Abbas has shown himself to be very weak. He just made another statement, as you might recall, on October 3rd, just a few days ago, before the invasion, talking about how they want a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. You only do that with bayonets and bullets and murdering. But this pay-to-slay idea is outrageous. 100% of every one of the terrorists, 100% get a salary while they're in prison. I mean, what other civilized, this is not civilized, what other country or entity, it is an entity, does that? It's barbaric.
In this stop during the Trump administration, there was the Taylor Force Act, where there was an American that was killed by terrorists in Israel. And this is something, again, we've seen it, I've heard it. Other members of Congress have been pushing this forward and finally got traction during the Trump administration. And this lawsuit in Texas, who one of your colleagues is actually a plaintiff in, Congressman Ronnie Jackson of Texas, is based upon the Biden administration actually violating the law by sending this money to the Palestinian Authority.
Without a doubt, there's been a whole series of things that the Biden administration has done to enable terrorists. You could say it's unwittingly. I think it's perhaps naive, but it might be with malice. But they certainly have done it. And they've done that especially with Iran. Now they do about 3 million barrels a day. It was 400,000 before. They are getting so much money through that. This whole horrific idea of giving them $6 billion, freeing that up claiming that it's for humanitarian purposes. Money is fungible. It's going to be used for terrorism, and they are the world's top terrorist nation, especially in the Middle East, but the world's worst. We need sanctions on this horrible regime, not enabling. And I am just baffled at it. Even their broadcast mechanism got a buy and an allowance, again, reversing a previous position by the Trump administration. But Taylor Force, that was an attempt to say, stop it. And we did stop a lot of money.
Right.
And unfortunately, the European Commission stepped in and doubled down and provided additional monies to their shame.
Just to be very clear here, I want our listeners to understand, Congressman Smith, that we're talking about Iran being able to have these assets that were frozen, that $6 billion. But we're talking about here, what you've been driving is the issue of U.S. tax dollars going to fund the Palestinian Authority. Yes. And you've seen the stuff in the textbooks. I've seen it. We talk about the indoctrination of our children here in America through our public schools, and that's bad. But part of, I believe, when I've seen the video coming out of Israel, I've heard the reports from those on the ground about the atrocities. I'm not surprised, given the indoctrination of how the Jewish people are portrayed in educational material under the Palestinian Authority.
Absolutely. There was in the South Pacific, Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical, there was a famous song that you've got to be taught to hate. They are teaching the entire next generation. They're radicalizing them from the very, very smallest of ages, youngest of ages. And surprise, surprise, they become brutal killers, psychotics, who go to concerts and kill and maim and rape and take hostages. They behead little babies. Where do you learn that? You learn that because you've been inculcated in a culture that hates Jews. It is demonic, in my opinion.
Yes.
They hate Americans too,
yes.
But Jews are the highest.
It is demonic. We only have about a minute left, Congressman Chris Smith. You also serve as the chairman of the Pro-Life Caucus. You've done so much for the sanctity of human life. I just want to ask you about this because there was a Carrie Lake, who's running for the United States Senate, announced last night that she's running. And I'm a little troubled by her statement on life, because she says this on her website. She says, abortion is, as the courts decided, an issue for states to decide, not the federal government. That is so wrong. That's not what the court decided.
No. She obviously didn't read the opinion, the Alito and the concurring opinion by Kavanaugh, which made very clear that lawmakers at every level, including states and federal, can set regulations, can prohibit it if they want, based on the legislative process. We have a huge role to play. I believe in protective statutes. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill for Heartbeat to protect lives at a very, very young age. And then there's the other one dealing with pain capable. So we have a role to play, and if we abscond and turn tail, we will see many states like my own, where abortion on demand till birth is the law of the state of New Jersey, given to us by Governor Murphy. And there are many other states like that, Colorado, California, New York. They're slaughtering kids right till birth. They behead them, dismember them, chemically poison them.
We've got to take a stand. And I know you're leading that effort. And clearly the federal government has a role legally and morally to do something. Congressman Chris Smith, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, stick around. We're coming back on the other side of the break to talk about our southern border.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I want to encourage you to continue to pray for Israel. We're going to be talking to the former U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, a little bit later. But we need to be praying for them. Also need to be praying for the House of Representatives. We're going to be talking with Kevin Hearn just a little bit, Oklahoma congressman, about the speaker's race. So much to be praying for. These guys have, men and women, have a lot on their plate. And one of those issues is, you know, when we look at this invasion of Israel by Hamas, this terrorist group, it underscores the need to secure our own southern borders. We need to learn from what's happened there, the distractions in Israel over the political division that they've been going through. You know, some are saying it's very clear. We talked about this yesterday. It's a part of this. Now, the Biden administration has failed to secure our southern border, leaving it vulnerable to infiltration by terrorists. According to recent reports, Border Patrol agents have arrested thousands of special interest aliens from numerous countries, including Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, who were attempting to cross the U.S. southern border illegally from 2021 to 23. Now, those numbers don't include the 1.5 million gotaways. Those didn't even get touched. They eluded capture at the border entering the country. Now, keep in mind, the number of Hamas terrorists that invaded Israel is reported to be about 1,500. Now, not all the 1.5 million gotaways are terrorists, but let's just say 1%, just 1%. That's 15,000 terrorists in America. What has the Biden administration exposed this country to? Joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Rich McCormick. He serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Georgia. Dr. McCormick, welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir.
What would you say, based upon what we're seeing coming out of Israel, the distraction, the intelligence failures, the vulnerability that we have on our southern border?
You know, my dad used to actually teach at FLETC, where we train border agents. It's very concerning to me that we're not taking this border seriously. The fact that 1.5 million, actually probably 1.7 million now, have crossed the border and eluded capture. If you're coming here to do us harm, you're probably more intent on avoiding capture than anybody. A lot of people come across the border, turn themselves in and say, let me go for asylum. Not these people, not people who want to do us harm. Think about the 85,000 children that have been lost, that came across the border, that we're responsible for. We have no accountability whatsoever. The one thing the government's supposed to do is make sure you have a sovereign nation, that you're protecting people. That's your first charge as a government. That's the reason we have a strong central government. Otherwise, why even bother? It just becomes intrusive. The fact that we haven't protected the people from one of the most dangerous commodities in the world is outrageous, especially after what happened in 9/11 and seeing what happened in Israel, what's happened around the world. The fact that we're not protecting our borders is unforgivable, really.
Congressman, when we look at what has happened since this weekend's invasion of Israel by Hamas, and we've seen pro-Palestinian demonstrations in cities across America, is there rising concern among your colleagues that we may have some folks in our midst that truly want to do us harm?
Either that or just plain ignorant. It always is amazing to me when you see the queers for Palestine. Just the irony can't be even explained. If you think about what that means, people that literally would kill you, you're supporting. That means you're a bit uneducated. The fact that we're losing the battle on our education front for these kids that should know better, should know what these people stand for. That these people that would behead babies. Think about how egregious that is to your common sense and sensibilities. I'm an ER doc. I've seen children die. It's one of the most horrific things you'll ever experience. I expect older people to die, but every single child that ever died on my watch has scarred me. It's something you'll never get over. And the fact that they're doing this in mass on purpose is something I've never seen. Yeah. It is as evil as you can possibly get. It's something the Bible refers to. I mean, talk about just causing kids to struggle is unforgivable, but to literally go out of your way to do serious disfigurement and harm, to rape women, to kill babies and disfigure them, I can't imagine going before God with that on your hands.
Well, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described it yesterday, he said these are, maybe the day before yesterday, he said these are like ISIS. And truly, when you look at what is coming out of Israel, it is just like ISIS and what they were doing before. Now, we know, Congressman, that the border security was a big issue in last month's budget negotiations. It became an issue, as we're talking about the trying to move forward with a continuing resolution. What can we expect in the appropriations negotiation once we elect a new speaker? Is this going to be even more of an issue now?
I don't think it ever stopped being an issue with us. We've always been united in this front that we understand it's not just a Republican issue. It's a bipartisan issue. It's an American issue. Even the Democrats now, even the sanctuary cities are tired of it. They understand now, once they started suffering their own consequences, they realize this is a bad idea. Even the most staunch Democrats now are like, enough is enough. This shouldn't be a contentious issue. We should get this done. The Senate should come on board. The president should get this done. It's just like crime. I think the border, crime, debt, and education are things that we as a nation can focus on that have nothing to do with partisanship, have to do with what's good for America. We can get this border done and secured, and everybody will be a lot better off.
I would think, Congressman, that you're absolutely right. I mean, I know it's not just a Republican issue. I think the American people, if they can connect the dots with what happens when people come across your border that want to do you harm and what we're witnessing coming out of Israel, if people just realize, and we're not saying that all the people coming into this country are bad people. They should do it legally, and we welcome those to use the legal process to come in and be a part of the American experience. But for those who want to come and do us harm, we need to be resolute that we will not tolerate that as Americans.
This is a war. If you come here to do ill to this country, expect to be dealt with accordingly. I'm a Marine first, is the way I think. I know I was an ER doc, I know I'm a congressman, but if you want to really get down to my common sense approach to people who invade my country, who want to do harm to my family, to my nation, you deserve death. I will end you. I think our country has to have that kind of attitude towards people who come here, invade your country to do harm to your family. Are you kidding me?
Right.
This is nothing short of war.
I'm with you. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
All right, Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for being with us today.
Always a pleasure, sir.
All right, folks. I mean, we've got so many issues before us, but this is why we need to pray. Be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. He didn't miss any of this, but we need to cry out to him. When we're coming up next, Congressman Kevin Hern of Oklahoma joins us on the speaker's race. Don't go away.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. In Pakistan, Asif Pervez is on death row for allegedly sending a blasphemous text message. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
This is Washington Watch. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. The website, TonyPerkins.com. All right, still to come, we're going to be joined a little bit later by the former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, is going to be joining us from Jerusalem a little bit later. The outcome of the closely divided race for the next Speaker of the House became a bit clearer this afternoon when the current House Majority Leader Steve Scalise received the endorsement of his top opponent, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Now, that came after the House Republicans gathered this morning and Steve Scalise won a majority vote in that conference. Now, there's still much more that has to happen. Congressman Scalise, or whomever it would be, has to receive 217 votes. So the next step will be for the entire House to meet, and Congressman Scalise would have to get 217 votes. What's that looking like at this point? Joining us now to talk about this and more, Congressman Kevin Hern. He serves on the House Ways and Means Committee and is the chairman of the Republican Study Caucus. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Oklahoma. Congressman Hern, welcome back to the program.
Great to have you, Tony. Great to be with you, Tony. It's been a busy day today, as you can probably imagine.
Well, I know it's been busy. You were considered, your name was tossed around for Speaker, and you made an announcement over the weekend that you wanted to see unity in the conference, and so you took your name out of contention and said, look, we've got these two good men, we need to get behind them. Did that happen this morning?
Well, I think it did. I think it's a pathway to reuniting the party. I called some 200 members last week, almost 51 hours of straight phone calls up until Friday afternoon, and then all day Saturday and Sunday. And certainly been a part of these conversations as we move forward into the speaker race with Steve and Jim, good friends of mine and yours as well. But, we got to get forward on down the road here, get our conference back with leadership. And I think today, when you look at what Congressman Scalise did in getting the majority of the secret ballot and then moving forward to the floor for the 217 votes, he's doing what he has always done. He's working on bringing those few votes that are remaining that, have some questions about, should they support him or not. And he's working to get those done. And I think he's going to get those sooner rather than later. All of us are rallying around him now, which is what you'd like to see in our new leader so that we can move forward.
So walk us through the behind the scenes a little bit about today and what took place as Republicans gathered behind closed doors to talk this through. Was there a sense of the times in which we live, that this is a very significant time. It's much different than what it was last week, given what happened over the weekend in Israel.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing certainly last week and leading up this entire year, quite honestly, is very populist movement in the country, and that's certainly spilt over into the House of Representatives, the People's House. And so a lot of individuals, a lot of individual voices wanting to be heard, and they felt like they weren't being heard. So we saw what happened last week. We had a motion to vacate, the first time in American history that's ever been used to actually vacate the Speaker of the House. And so then we're sort of in disarray, quite honestly, about where we go forward. And Patrick McHenry did a great job, a phenomenal job of going into the unknown where there's no playbook and moving us over this past week to get to where we are and today. And then listening to all the members in the conference, wanting to look at possibly doing a rule change on how we elect our speaker out of the conference and take to the floor, knowing how important it is for the American government to show unity, to show that we're back in business, to get away from the chaos that we've been seeing for some, the past 7 or 8 days. And then what happened Saturday in Israel is just horrific. Our hearts and prayers go out to all the people in Israel who have lost people, who are still looking for their loved ones, and certainly the Americans that are there as well. And so now here we are. We're going to go to the floor, and we're going to get to 217 votes, and we're going to work hard to do it.
Are we going to see something similar to what we saw in January, or is this going to move more quickly through the process?
I think it's going to move more quickly because I think what you're going to see is we're going to know what the votes are. It's different set of interest, I believe, talking to Steve versus talking to Speaker McCarthy, former Speaker McCarthy, in the first week of the year about direction, because a lot of those rules are going to stay in place. Single issue appropriation bills, having open amendments. Those are a lot of the dialogue that happened the first week that won't be revisited. Those are going to be in place. And now it's just a few more cleaning up, if you will, of some of the policies that some of these members like to see. And I know the new speaker, the speaker-elect, is working on those right now.
Congressman, we only have about 30 seconds left. Congressman Hern, your name's being put out there for Majority Leader if Steve Scalise is elevated to Speaker. I know you took your name out of contention for Speaker, but would you consider serving as a Majority Leader?
I would, but first we got to get Speaker, filled, the Speaker seat filled with Steve, and that as soon as that happens, then his seat, the Majority Leader seat, which is like the Chief Operating Officer of the conference, would come up. And the role is to support the leadership, the speakers, especially in the vision of the conference, going out and doing the heavy lifting of bringing people together, listening, finding solutions, setting the calendar so that we actually get the appropriation bills done on time. It's something I've done, keeping the trains on the track and on time for, literally decades, outside of Washington, D.C. Don't see that as something that I haven't been, the skill set that I've had for some 30 years. And so I look forward to the opportunity, and we're going to make sure we do everything we can to win that seat.
Well, I think you do a great job if your colleagues picked you to be the Majority Leader. Congressman Kevin Hern, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, Congressman Kevin Hern of Oklahoma. Folks, again, continue to pray. The process is not yet over. It could be a couple more days, so continue to pray for the House and the leadership, and that God would move on their hearts to bring about unity. Our nation and the world needs it. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman from Israel. Don't go away.
The world is hurting. Streets are filled with crime. Families are broken. Sin is celebrated, and God is mocked. Everywhere we look, the wages of our sin are on full display. As Christians, we know that surrender to God's will is the solution to our biggest problems, but not everyone agrees. Even in church, we hear people say the most important thing is to be tolerant, that we shouldn't impose our morality on other people, and that loving our neighbor means celebrating what they do. But you can't do that. It's not that you don't love your neighbor, you do, but you care about God's opinion more than your neighbor's opinion, and this makes you different. In fact, sometimes it makes you feel alone, like you're the only one. But there is good news. You are not alone, not even close. Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these SageCons yourself, go to frc.org/SageCon and take the quiz to find out. The world is hurting, and we have the solution. We can't do it alone, but we can do it if we work together. That's what we're working toward every day. Join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
I'm often asked by people, Tony, how do you stay encouraged? How do you deal with all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., the negative policies that are attacking our faith, our family, and our freedoms? Well, you want me to let you in on the secret? It's called the Word of God. And that is why the Family Research Council embarked on Stand on the Word, a 2-year journey through the Bible. It's a chronological Bible reading plan with just 10 to 15 minutes a day. In 2 years, you will have covered the entire Bible. And to go along with this, Monday through Friday, I do a morning devotional that goes along with the reading of the day. It's all designed to encourage you on this journey because the Word of God, as the psalmist said, in my affliction, here's my comfort. Your Word gives me life. That is our source of strength. To find out more, go to tonyperkins.com or frc.org/Bible. And I invite you to join me every morning for our Stand on the Word Bible devotion. Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us on this Wednesday. The website, tonyperkins.com. Resources there for you. Be sure and check it out. Well, as we've been talking about, as the war in Israel has moved into the 5th day, reports continue to emerge from Israel regarding the brutality and the carnage that Hamas perpetrated on Israeli civilians, even babies. Now, accurate numbers are difficult to acquire, but it is widely reported that more than 2,000 people have been killed, including at least 22 Americans. There are reportedly believed to be about 150 hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Well, today, Israeli leaders agreed to a unity government featuring a wartime cabinet that includes the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as his political rival, Knesset member Benny Gantz. Joining me now with the latest from Israel is Ambassador David Friedman, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Israel during the Trump administration, where he was a part and actually played a key role in the Abraham Accords and in moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He is the founder of the Friedman Center for Peace Through Strength and the author of the book Sledgehammer, How Breaking with the Past Brought Peace to the Middle East. Ambassador, welcome to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tony. Good to be with you.
I want to start by springboarding off the title of your book, The Policies of the Past and the Push by the international community, often facilitated by the United States, for Israel to appease their enemies by giving up land. That hasn't worked so well. Will there be a break from the past as we deal with this current crisis?
Well, I sure hope so. You know, every time Israel has left territory, that vacuum has been filled by terrorists. Whether in Lebanon, the vacuum was filled by Hezbollah. When they left Sinai, the vacuum was filled by ISIS. When they left Gaza, as you know, the vacuum was filled by Hamas. Giving up land in hoping for peace is a failed strategy, and it will continue to fail. I wish we didn't have to learn this lesson in such a painful way as we learned over the past few days. I mean, as you point out, the brutality is unthinkable, undescribable. I don't think I ever expected that. I didn't think any human being was capable of such brutality. I won't. You know, everyone can look on it online. I mean, but it's babies and forcing children to watch their parents being slaughtered, and forcing parents to watch their children, being slaughtered. It's It's taking Holocaust survivors, 80, 90-year-old women who never would have thought that they'd ever live to see this type of behavior again. They're now being held hostage, in Gaza. By the way, more than 10% of the hostages are American, in addition to the 22 Americans that have been killed. There's at least 17 American hostages. One of my daughter's close friends, my daughter went to school here for several years. My youngest daughter, one of her friends, they just found his body yesterday. I had to speak to his mother. I don't think I've ever experienced more pain in a human being than to lose a child like that. So that's what's going on here. The flip side of it is, if there is any kind of a silver lining, it's that the people of Israel are united, I think, as never before.
Yeah.
Israelis of all stripes and views and philosophies are coming home to their basic values. They're joining together. People are flying in. Israelis on vacation all over the world are flying back, rushing back to join the reserves, to join the army. Those who are not in the army are doing everything they can to help the troops. The philanthropy that's coming in from all over the diaspora is extraordinary. So, this is a terrible price to pay for that unity. But Israel is united, and when it's united in this way, and when the world is united around Israel, not just the Jewish world, but the Christian world, when your viewers are united around Israel, it gives us all a certainty that with God's help, Israel is going to prevail.
Ambassador, yesterday we had a mutual friend on. Dr. Ari Sasher was on the program, and we were talking about that very thing, how this has united Israel that has been fractured. I mean, there's been a lot of political controversy, much like what we're experiencing here in the United States. And this has brought them together. In fact, he said that the response to the call up to the reserves has been 150%, more people showing up than what they even called.
Yeah, they're short on all kinds of supplies because they didn't expect this overwhelming response. We heard a month ago from some people in the military who didn't like the politics, where the politics was going. They said, well, we're not going to serve under this government. Well, that's all out the window. Everybody is serving. People were rushing to serve. The patriotism here and the determination, to not, and I think I'm not overstating the case when I say this is a never again moment. We use the phrase never again very freely to make sure that there'll never be another Holocaust. But what happened on October 7th, this past Saturday, was a day of a Holocaust. It's not the same in scope as the Holocaust, because in the Holocaust, that happened every single day. But that was a day that could literally be pulled out of those ugly years, and it was entirely reminiscent of the cruelty and the barbarity of the Holocaust. And now, we're going to prove that never again, hopefully we're going to prove never again is not an empty slogan. Never again really means something. And it's going to show that, the difference between the Holocaust and today is that now there's a state of Israel. Now there is a state that is committed to defending the Jewish people, and they're going to prevail. And they have to prevail, because this is just the tip of the spear. These barbarians are out for every American. They're out for everyone who values freedom and democracy. And who is of a different faith than theirs. So, there's no defeat. Failure is just not an option here, and there won't be any failure.
Ambassador, I want to help put this in context for our viewers and listeners, because the Middle East, Israel has always kind of been at the center of animosity. And we're always hearing about something happening over there. And I was there in the summer of 2014 when there was the attacks, rocket attacks. But this is different. This is a level of atrocity and brutality that, I can only describe based on what I've seen. I've gotten some video from sources there, plus what's out there available on the internet. This is good versus evil. This is demonic in what we're seeing perpetrated on civilians.
It's absolutely demonic. Look, taking a pregnant woman, slaughtering her, ripping open her belly, and then throwing around the fetus. It's. I don't think the English language has words to describe this, because it's never happened. I just don't know what to make of it. I've seen people crying, and my response to them is, if you're if you're part of the family, cry, cry. But, for the rest of us, let's not cry. I mean, this is not the time to cry. This is the time to be resolved and to be strong and to make sure this never happens again, and Tony, one thing which I think, people need to know, because it's really important, there are some crazy people out there that claim that, this is a natural outgrowth of Israel's oppression of the people of Gaza. Let me just tell you about the Gaza Strip for those who don't know. The Gaza Strip has one of the longest stretches of beachfront of any nation in the Mediterranean. It's got exactly the same beach as you'll see in Tel Aviv, which has one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. Gaza has mansions where a lot of the corrupt leaders, where they live. Now, why is Gaza a place that either you or I would want to live? Because of Hamas, not because of Israel. I mean, there's not a single Jew living in Gaza. There's not a single Israeli soldier stationed in Gaza. There is nothing Israel wants from Gaza other than to have a quiet border. But instead, Hamas has taken over the Gaza Strip in an election. People chose Hamas, and Hamas wants to kill Jews. And because Hamas wants to kill Jews and destroy the state of Israel, Israel's not letting the people of Gaza travel freely, into their territory, or travel or to, import massive weapons from the Mediterranean Sea. But it's all because of Hamas. If tomorrow, Gaza was to be liberated from Hamas, and they said, you know what, enough of this craziness, we're going to go build hotels along the Mediterranean. We're going to restore some of the incredible farmland that grew some of the best fruits and vegetables that I remember when I was a kid, when Israel was in control of Gaza. They said that tomorrow Israel wouldn't impose anything on them. There would be no, there would be nothing to complain about. So, if there's going to be any blame cast on the people of Gaza and the quality of their lives, that blame is 100% to be directed at Hamas, nobody else, not Israel. And so, I not only is it absurd to ever make an excuse for somebody who kills a baby, but the facts that are being used to justify that are all wrong. I mean, it's all wrong. Gaza is not a place that Israel's oppressing. It's a place that Hamas is oppressing.
They made that themselves. As you said, they were elected to leadership, and they've
Yes.
done this. The Israelis turned that over to them back in 2005. So let me ask you this, Ambassador, when you listen to what the Prime Minister is saying, I mean, obviously there's a preparation for ground operations in Gaza. It's one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. I mean, there's a lot of people there. That's going to be a protracted, long, drawn-out initiative. What does America and the international community need to do? You've made the comment that Israel needs to be unhandcuffed. They cannot have the same rules of engagement that the world has placed on them before to take care of this problem.
Yeah. Look, in the past, Israel has, with the world's insistence, managed a conflict, which means that every few years, Hamas will shoot some rockets, Israel will retaliate, they'll degrade Hamas's capabilities, but then they'll be built back. And by the way, I should point out that they're being built back with an enormous amount of money from Iran, which has gotten way, way, way richer over the last 3 years. If you compare how much oil they've sold in 2022 to what they sold in 2020, it's about 8 times the amount. So, that's a huge issue that we have to solve and return to the old days of massive sanctions. But right now, it's not about managing a conflict. Right now, it's about winning a war. They have to be able to win a war. Israel, has not been given permission from the world, including from the United States, to win a war. And that's why this thing keeps popping up over and over and over again. And the Israelis are suffering, and the Palestinians are suffering. And the only ones who are making any money and prospering is Hamas and Iran and their cohorts. Right. So this time is different.
Unfortunately, that's been America's approach for the most part since the Korean War is containment until the Trump administration, where he decided to actually win these military engagements. So it is going to be a break. But this is where I think we have to stand with the Israeli people. We need to allow them to take care of business to make sure their country is safe, their people are safe. Speaking of that, What do you anticipate, or what are you hearing? We've heard today of some incursions from the north. Is there great concern that we may see something coming from Hezbollah in the north?
Yeah, there's great concern. There was reports today of drone incursions, of light aircraft incursions. It turned out to be, thank God, a false alarm. So we'll wait another day to see what happens from the north. But it's a tinderbox up there. I think the United States. Look, I've been very critical of the Biden administration for how we got to this place. I think they made a lot of mistakes funding the PA, funding UNRWA, funding Iran. I mean, they've made a lot of mistakes, and we're here today very much because of those mistakes. But what they've done over the last couple of days, I would commend, bringing the Gerald Ford into the region, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, bringing a second aircraft carrier now, I understand, being brought in, sending a very clear message to Iran and its proxies: do not escalate beyond this point. I'm not sure that Iran or Hezbollah care much anymore about what the administration says. I don't know if we really are achieving the deterrence, because this has not been a strong administration, but it's good. This is good. This is a good message to send, and I hope it resonates. And I hope that the United States backs up their threats with actions and shows that they mean business when it comes to Iran or Hezbollah entering the war. So that's where we are. Hezbollah is right on the border. It's a tinderbox. It could explode at any moment. Right now, it has not yet exploded.
Ambassador, just have a couple minutes left. And how can believers here in the United States, Christians, evangelicals who support Israel, how can we be praying, and what can we do?
Look, we have to pray. I think that as much as we need weapons and artillery and brave soldiers, we need God's help, and we have to pray. And I pray every day, and I read the Psalms, and I think the Psalms have great lessons, for how we should deal with this conflict. King David said that he has in Psalm 29, he concludes with the words, "May the Lord give strength unto his people. May the Lord bless his nation with peace." And I always found that amusing or interesting, because if you have peace, why do you have to be strong? Why are we asking for the God to make us strong, then asking us to have peace? If we have peace, we don't need strength. God's telling us we do. God is telling us that the only way we can achieve peace, or I should say King David, who wrote the psalm, is telling us that the only way we can achieve peace is by being strong. So what we can do in America, obviously, there's lots of philanthropic avenues to help the state of Israel. They need everything. But the most important thing is to make sure that the elected officials of the United States, the Congress, the president, nobody can do more for Israel right now than America. Nobody. No one has the resources, the assets. We have to push this as a major priority of the United States. There's a lot of isolationists out there. There's a lot of people who are tired of Ukraine. They think Israel should be, they're looking at Israel saying, why another front? This is different.
Yes,
this is about avoiding another Holocaust.
Ambassador, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being generous. It's late in the evening over there in Israel. I want to thank you for joining us, and know that we are praying for you.
I appreciate it very much. Keep praying, and thank you very much, Tony.
Folks, keep praying and keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.